Hey, so if you give me a few minutes here, we will discuss how to transition from bulking to cutting. And as long as you don't mind my patchy little hairs and stuff here, I don't know, man, I wish I could grow it in fully. But I have 7 things that I want to discuss here. And the first thing is that I would go from straight from bulking right to cutting. I wouldn't do a maintenance phase first. The reason for this is because some people will say that, you should run a maintenance phase when transitioning from bulking to cutting. And while I think there might be some merit to that, and it might make sense, usually the rationale behind this is that you should maintain for a bit so you can better retain your muscle mass. So you give your body some time to kind of get used to having that muscle mass so it holds onto it better. But my contention is that why wouldn't you just keep massing for that month anyways? And then even if you did lose like a tiny bit of muscle, well, you were massing during that phase anyways, so you might net more muscle at the end of a diet anyways if you did go through a massing period instead of just maintaining for that month. So I would just do 1 week of a deload and maintenance in between your mesocycles there, and then I would go straight into a cutting phase. Like, you could do a maintenance phase, you could, and I think that there's rationale to do one. But I would probably kind of jump straight to it. Now, the second thing that you need to do is find your maintenance calories, which shouldn't be that hard considering you probably know your calories for gaining. So whatever you're gaining on, if you're gaining, 1 to 3 pounds per month, you're probably in a 200 to 300 calorie surplus. So then you can just subtract 200 to 300 calories to what you're gaining on. And then depending on what you want to do next, you can adjust those calories for your deficit goal. For example, if you're gaining on 3,000 calories, about 1 to 3 pounds per month, then your maintenance calories is probably in the range of like 26 to 2,800 calories, somewhere in there. So you might say, hey, my maintenance is probably 2,700. Then you can use that to estimate your calories for your calorie deficit. You guys know those ads where it's like, here in my garage with my Lamborghini and all the books I read? You know those? Well, here in my garage with my flat bottom boat and this countertop, we're going to give you some more tips. So part 3, or the third consideration here, is how much of a calorie deficit, or what do you do with your calories and your macros while you diet? Well, now that we know our maintenance levels, or more or less, and if you're confused on that, shoot me a message, let me know. But we know that. The next is, how aggressive do we want to diet? If it's a mini cut, then I think it's probably a pretty good idea to go into a 7 to 1,000 calorie deficit per day. If it's a mini cut. If it's a more standard cut, then maybe more so a 500 calorie deficit a day. As for your protein, carbs, and fats, for protein, I would keep things the same. I would keep things around probably a gram per pound, probably no less than that while dieting, just to play it safe. For fats, I would probably decrease your fat intake to probably around 0.3 to 0.5 grams per pound. Now, it might not be decreasing it depending on what your fat intake was while you're gaining, but that's probably where I'd stick with while dieting, and then the rest from your carbs. And the fourth point that I want you to do, oh yeah, by the way, I shaved. How about that? Looks so much better now, right? I mean, I still looked pretty good, but okay. So the fourth thing I want you to do is to ignore the scale the first week. I've had clients where we calculate the calorie deficit and, they get kind of worried, we're not dropping weight. Should we decrease calories more? What should we do here? I'm just like, chill here for a second. All right, we'll be all right. Don't worry. And then we give it a couple weeks. Then overnight, their weight drops like 3 kilos and then it stays there. So, well, maybe not 3 kilos, like a kilo or 2, Not so crazy, Ryan. Anyways, so that first week, it makes sense to kind of ignore the scale. Do you like my mom's little flower garden there? She loves it, that garden, man. But she's got like 3 flowers in it. I'm just like, Mom, what's so special about it? But anyways, I used to pick these little dandelion weeds for my mom when I was young, and I didn't realize that they're basically just weeds. You're giving your mom weeds. Okay, anyways, the fifth thing that I want to talk about is, if it's a mini cut, you almost can ignore the scale most of the point altogether. And you almost just have to trust the calorie deficit, because things on a mini cut, like your weight might just not play ball at all. Like, you might hold more water because you're more stressed out, and it's such a short time period to where it's really tough to trust the scale like at all. So there's probably not many adjustments you're gonna have to make to a mini cut, but you'll probably just have to trust the calorie deficit. For a more standard cut, it's probably a good idea to try to lose between 0.5% and 1% of your body weight per week. And if you don't lose that weight for 2 weeks in a row, so give it 2 weeks. If you don't lose it for 2 weeks in a row, then I would decrease your daily calorie deficit by another 100 calories. Just cut things by 100 calories. You could also, think about working your steps up a little bit if they are already low, but my go-to would be decrease calories by about 100 per day across the week. Point number 6 is to slowly increase your food volume as you go throughout your deficit. I think that this is a good idea because if you eat all the food volume right away, then what are you gonna do if hunger starts kicking up in your diet? You have nowhere to turn. And if you do all the food volume, all the artificial sweeteners, all that stuff through your diet, then it's almost setting you up like a competitive food eater to where you can eat all this food and then after your diet, it could set you up for disaster. I know, man, when I went off to college, it was right after I dieted for 2 years. And I dieted off 60 pounds and I was eating all the food volume, all the artificial sweeteners, everything. Then I went to college meal plan. I didn't track anymore. Dude, I ate a lot of food. In that first semester, I probably put on 15 pounds of fat. I mean, I was also drinking a little alcohol and doing other things that just weren't aligned with my goals, and that stressed me out that I was doing those things. And then I kind of got my shit together and got things back on track after that first semester. But sixth point, try to slowly increase your food volume as you go throughout a deficit. Try not to use all these nutritional strategies right away of, having bigger salads and artificial sweeteners and stuff like that. Slowly ease into it, all right? My mom also really likes when hummingbirds come and sit on her little feeder there. I don't know what the deal is, but she just loves hummingbirds. But anyways, I'm sure you guys are very interested in hummingbirds. But the last thing that I want to mention is what to do with training. So for your training, I think it's a good idea to work in more moderate volume levels compared to your gaining phase. So in your gaining phase, if you're typically working from 10 to 20 sets on average per muscle per week, then during a cutting phase, maybe you stick with 12 to 15 sets per muscle per week. More moderate range just because your maximum recoverable volume is probably a little bit lower since you have less resources for recovery with food and maybe a little bit more stressed. Plus, you may be a little more catabolic on average, more conducive to tissue breakdown, so you might need a little bit more stimulus to maintain your muscles. So that's why a more moderate range might make sense. Also, for your reps in reserve, it's probably a good idea to keep things a little bit more conservative than gaining. So maybe in a gaining phase, maybe that last week, it's all 0 reps in reserve. Well, during a dieting phase, I might be a little bit more conservative and may work from 3 to 4 reps in reserve down to 1 to 2 reps in reserve and keep it just a little bit more conservative. So we're kind of maximizing our stimulus to fatigue ratio while we're kind of going through this dieting phase. So that is how I transition. Look at my dog looking at me like, what is this idiot doing talking on our deck to his phone? But that's how I would transition from a bulking phase to a cutting phase. If you have any questions about it, make sure to shoot me a comment, shoot me a message, anything like that. Be happy to help you out, and I'll see you next Sunday.